Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we Masechtas Menachot daf Ayin Beis. We're going to begin on Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, the second line from the top. Kaitzrin mipnei hanatiyos mipnei beis avil mipnei beis hamedrash. So one is not allowed to do any harvesting because you have to first make sure to bring the Omer offering. However, there are exceptions. We discussed some of them before. Here also, if you need the space for an Avel or for the sake of people being able to learn Torah, that's allowed. So my taima, Katsir Chemoim Rachman Lo Katsir Mitzvah. The whole issue is only if you're doing it for your own sake. But if you're doing it for the sake of a mitzvah, then it's allowed. It says that you should make them as bundles, these stalks, and you should not keep them loose. So my taima, to come the efshelo tarchinan, as much as you can do, the better. We don't want to do more than necessary. Okay, mitzvah sa'omer will habi min akam. So when it comes to the omer, it's supposed to be standing grain. Tanaban, be'im takriv minchas bikurim. So matam omer. What do we learn from here? Levisha. It teaches us that again, that the omer on Pesach is supposed to come from the standing grains. How do we know if you don't have standing grains, you could take it from a pile? It's better for that to be moist than bring dry. That really you're supposed to do it at the night, on the second night of Pesach. How do we know if it's done during the day? It's okay. And it says Shabbos, which means, as we discussed before in the Mishnah, in the beginning of this parak, that if a person is able to be over the malach of Shabbos, of course it's Chil Shabbos. But when it comes to this, it's a mitzvah to do the katsira, and there's a machlokus over there. Do you have to do it a little bit differently? More than one sickle is not allowed. More than one person, more than one basket. 3 versus 5. So, but nonetheless, everyone holds it's Doicha Shabbos. Apparently, everyone. Talmud Lomer Takriv Kol Shehu. Takriv Mikol Makom Takriv Afil B'Shabbos Takriv Afil B'Tumah. Okay. Nixer B'Yoyim Kosher. So again, it's seemingly, even though you're supposed to L'Chatchila do the Katsira at night, if you did the next day, it's okay. The Mishnah Megillah says at night it's kosher to do the Ksir Sa'imer. That's when you're supposed to do the harvesting of the barley, and also to bring the sacrificial parts, the fats and the limbs, are done at night. Zeklal. This is the general rule. Davar, kol davar, shemitzvasoi kol hayoim, or it says bayoim, doesn't mean all day, it means any time during the day. Kosher kol hayoim. Davar shemitzvasoi b'layla, kosher kol layla. Katani layla dum diyoim. Madiyoim b'layla loy, after layla biyoim nami loy. So the fact that it talks about katsir sa'imer, it says that it's done at night, which is mashma dafke at night and not during the day. So it's a kasha. So Marabu kasha, Harbi and Rabbi Lezer. Apparently we have this machlokas, Rabbi and Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon, whether or not it's allowed to be done during the day. This Tanya. Let's say a person, Kain is being makriv the oimer, v'nit masai, and then the minchas oimer became tamei, right? So that's a possibility, right? That's what happened. So let's say you have other barley, oimerlo, we say to him, havi acheres tachtem, bring others. Just remain silent, don't say anything, because there's nothing else, so at least use that, even though it's not ideal that it should be tameh, but better than nothing. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Divi Rabbi. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Oimer, Ben Koch Ben Kach Oimer Havi Pekech Meshasuk. In other words, whether you have or you don't have, you can be makrivit, which is mashma, even though you do have, right? Shekol ha'omer shenixer shul k'mitzvaso pasul, because we're now talking about the next day, and therefore anyone who has the katsira that's done not in the proper time, it's pasul, right? And therefore, as Rashi says, umitzvahs katsir b'layla, it's supposed to be done at night. V'lo b'yayim hilkach hadan le'el. So this answers a question. The mission in Megillah, which is mashma dafka at night but not during the day, is like this shita. Okay, fine. So that's how we answer it. Let's look at question 1. It became tameh. When do we say be silent? So if there's nothing else, so it's this or nothing. There's no other barley anywhere. So bring that, because it could be brought patuma. And there's a machlokis where if there is more. So the machlokis is if you can bring others. Menachot im oimer sheniksa b'yayim shel mekatzvaso kasher oy pasol. V'yisayid machlokis ikatzir sa'oimer doicha Shabbos. Okay, fine. So Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon B'Shittas Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Shel Aviv Amar. He's actually following the same shita. Did not. Klal Am Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva said a klal in out of the many different klolim and klal gadol kol malacha sheshul asayis me'erev Shabbos in the deichas to Shabbos. So he says an interesting thing, that even when it comes to a malacha, that maybe certain times you could be deichas Shabbos. However, if it's something that you could have done before, then it's not deichas Shabbos. Because what's your excuse? If you could have done it before Shabbos, so then why did you wait until Shabbos to do it? So that's the general rule. And specifically, Rashi says it's talking about a bris milah. So even though in Rebbe Elazar milah was not the Shabbos, it's true that maybe a bris milah you're allowed to do, even though you're making a chavala, you're being moitzi dam, which is something you can't do on Shabbos. But for the sake of a mitzvah, it says v'yoyim hashmini mo basar lasai in Parshas Tazria. So because of that, okay, so you're allowed to do it because it's exerts a custom. But it's only because the bris has to be done bismanai, but everything else should have been done before. Bring the knife, etc. Okay, so Rashi says Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shmuel the Eimer Katzir Ha'Eimer Mitzvah V'Deicha Shabbos. Fine, so that's what we see from this concept. The several Rabbi Shmuel the Eimer Katzir Ha'Eimer Mitzvah, that the Katzir Ha'Eimer is a mitzvah to do it at night and on Shabbos. The non Rabbi Shmuel Eimer Ma'acharish Rishos Av Katzir Rishos. The whole prohibition is if you're doing it for yourself. Yatzik Katzir Ha'Eimer She Mitzvah. However, if you're doing a harvest of the Oimer, which is a mitzvah to do, so therefore that is Deicha Shabbos. If in fact you don't have to do it at night, you could use it during the day, so then am I Deicha Shabbos? So then why do we say it's Deicha Shabbos? So let's say again, the second day of Pesach is on Shabbos, right? So it's Friday night is the second night of Pesach, so it's Shabbos. So the question is, Niktzri Erev Shabbos. Why do we harvest it on Erev Shabbos, right? Which I guess could mean on Yom Tiv, or let's say even before Yom Tiv. You harvest it before, right? And you keep it for a couple of days. So if it's not necessary that it has to be done specifically at that time, or that it's possible that you could use other barley that was not harvested at that time, then we shouldn't say that it's Deicha Shabbos either. Ela Midedachi Shabbos, the fact that it's Deicha Shabbos, this is the whole connection. So Shema Mina Nixer Shul Mitzvah Apostle. It must be that it can't be done any other time, right? It has to be done at the right time. If it's not done at the right time, it's not good. Fine. So the Rabbi will have Talmid Rav Shimon, who is the Rabbi of Rav Shimon. Just Basanya, I'm a Rabbi Kishahayinu, I made him tar Eitzel Rav Shimon, but the Koam, when I was learning by Rav Shimon, Hayinu Ma'alwin Loy Shemen, brought him some oil, and this is brought down Masechtas Eruvin as well, that you can bring things from one roof to the next in courtyards. They're all considered to be like the same rishus, and therefore, if let's say there's a kli that was on the top of a roof, you can bring it and transfer it from roof to roof. Va'aluntis mechatzel lagag mekarpef and mekarpef lekarpaf. So he allowed also towels to be brought again to dry people for wiping. Lekarpef acher ad shianu magin l'ma'ayin she'anu roichatzin bay, until it finally got to the place where we're bathing. So we see clearly he holds like Rav Shimon. So several kidach to Rav Shimon. The Sanya Omer Rav Shimon, boyru'ei kama chaviva mitzvah l'shaita. How great is a mitzvah in its proper time? Says Rashi. What does this mean? Hilkach afa gav diksherim erev Shabbos abdi la b'shaita. Even though you could do it before, it's better to do it on that time and do it on Shabbos. V'gabi milu d'yomer kol malacha shev shasos erev Shabbos eno decha Shabbos. So that's Kegain Havas Ismoi, bringing a knife, the Enel Zman Kavua, because it has no set time. Okay. Shahari Hector Chilam Me'avarim Ksherim Kohalai. We know the bringing of these fats and limbs can be brought any time, right? Any time at night. And we don't wait until it gets dark, says Rashi. So the question is, if in fact you're able to just do them at night and Shabbos is over, so why aren't we doing that? It's because Gadol, great is the mitzvah b'shaita, says Rashi, al medachin and Shabbos mishum chavim mitzvah b'shaita. So we will be makter these karbanos, these parts of the karbanos, even on Shabbos, even though technically it could be done after Shabbos, because that shows how great is a mitzvah in its time. As we continue to Amud Beis. Rabbi Lezrab Shimon Lushimili Ella Shani Hasim Sharidachta Shchita as a Shabbos. This is an important detail. That the reason why perhaps where things are different is because you already are doing Isser Malacha of Shchita to begin with. So since you're already doing Isser Malacha, which you're allowed to do on Shabbos for a carbon, so therefore you're allowed to do everything else, says Rashi. El malkarcha shemia v'li gamimina the hasam gami avarim shani dedachu Shabbos mishum chavivas mitzvah. Why do we say you could be marked these fats and limbs? Shari dachta shchita as a Shabbos koydem l'haktara. That before you did the haktara, you already have violated. Maybe that's not the right word. You did something in which typically is chil Shabbos, but you're allowed to do the shchita in the Beis HaMikdash. So since that was allowed with this carbon, so you can continue and do other things with this carbon. The eshel asayis erev Shabbos, because the shchita has to be done on Shabbos itself. The Talmud has to be done. The karbanos are brought on Shabbos. So since that was done, so everything else. We give it a nitin. Shabbos lidches etzel shchita, then Shabbos is pushed off because of the shchita. Nidcha nami etzel haktara. Ava ba'omer, when it comes to the katsira, leik lememer hachi. The b'shas katsira katil lidchi Shabbos. So it's different that maybe we won't allow you to because you never did any avoda before that. Rabbi hachinami dachsa shchita to Shabbos. El uksaver, so Shchita is Daicha Shabbos. El Ksavar Rebbe Katsir Sa'omer L'Dachei Shabbos. The actually Rebbe, believe it or not, says that Katsir Sa'omer is not Daicha Shabbos. It cannot be done. Below V'Tanan V'Chame Omer Me'achad Shabbos V'Achad Choyel Mishalosh Hayaba. It says that they would do it on Shabbos. Yeah, okay, that's the local Rebbe. That's not like Rebbe. V'Chachamim Omer Echad Shabbos V'Echad Choyel B'Shloisha B'Shalosh Kupos B'Shalosh Magalois, as we said in the Mishnah. That's 3. You on Shabbos you use 3 sickles, 3 baskets. Again, the look of Rebbe. Shabbos Yom Lehem Shabbos Zu, the look of Rebbe. All those opinions of our Mishnah is not like the Shita of Rebbe. Okay, so that's the explanation. All right, let's look at maybe a question over here before we get too far ahead of ourselves. TA 21. Madul Rebbe Okay, so we just said that. So this is actually, Rashi's very helpful over here. This is TA21. So, as we said, when it comes to the Imorim, it's different because you already did the Shechita, so now, since it's Doiche because of the Shechita, so then you'll also be able to do the Hakatayra. Mashenkin, when it comes to the Omer, you weren't Doiche Shabbos yet, so therefore, maybe when it comes to the Katsir, we're not going to say Chaviva Mitzvah B'Shaita. Okay. TB, let's see if there's a question here. B'ma toli hanidan I katsir sa'omer doicha Shabbos, u'b'ma toli hanidan I afiyas shtei halechem doicha Shabbos. Okay, so im lo kaitzer o im nitmis im yachal lixer gam b'yoyim hamacharas o davka b'layel vo b'yoyim. Okay, that is correct. So that is TB24. So it's totally, if you could do it another time, then maybe it's not Doicha Shabbos. It was that Uma totally hanidan ima fia shtei halechem Doicha Shabbos. So it's kind of interesting. It's not Rashi. I thought this was by the Imur, and I wrote im yochel asais koidim l'chein. If you do it before, zeh mutter v'rakim kfar machal Shabbos kamo b'shchita. Maybe I was just not sure what the answer was, so I just kind of was hoping. All right, let's see. Maybe TC18. Similar question. B'mata nidan im kasir so aimer doicha Shabbos. B'mata nidan im afias shtei lechem doicha Shabbos. So more of the same. Pretty amazing. The last question was Samaches. This is Ayin Bays. Well, that's a big jump. Okay, that's TC18. Imu asim b'mitzvasa b'layla im yachol havim machars b'shat b'yoyim v'zayim avad es ha'sa'ira. Okay. I wrote im mekadosh b'tanur or b'kli. I have no idea if that's correct either. Okay, hopefully I'll eventually get that answer correct, but they keep asking the same question. Probably I should figure out what the answer is. Okay, so let's finish the parak. So b'Shabbos yarmilhem Shabbos zu dol kurem. Okay, so nitzer b'yoyim kasher v'dachas Shabbos. So man shamalei yarmin nitzer b'yoyim kasher. Who's the sheet that you could do it during the day? Rabbi. V'tani v'dachas Shabbos. And it says you could. It's also deicha Shabbos. So my lav katsira. Now sounds kind of interesting. It's mashma that even though you didn't do it at night, you could do it during the day. For some reason, it could still be Deicha Shabbos, which just didn't say that. So yeah, but it doesn't mean the Katsira, because I mean that's not. Lo, it means Al Hakarava, being Makta. Avol Katsira Loi. According to him, he would not allow you to do the Katsira on Shabbos. Well, as we said before, Vosan, your Rebbe, Rabbi Daber, Moshes Moadi Hashem, Atamad Leimer, Lafish, Lomanu Ella, Latamad Upesach. We only learn when it comes to the carbon Tamid and the Pesach, Shnemerhem B'Moado, Hivil B'Shaz, when it comes to those two items, we always had to bring the carbon tamid and also the carbon pesach, even if it's on Shabbos, even if it's tumah. Obviously, it's pesach sheni. It means if there's a majority of Klal Yisrael is tameh, that's what it's referring to. Shar karbanos hatzibur menayin. How do we know that also other karbanos can be doicha Shabbos and tumah? Talmud leimer elu taso Hashem b'moadechem. So menayin l'rabos oimer, and this is the key, what we're trying to get to. The hikriv imo shtei halechem, and you can be makriv the shtei halechem. V'hikriv imoy shtei halechem v'hikriv imohen. Right. So how do we know by the shtei halechem? Talmud leimer midaber Moshe Moadi Hashem hakasuv kavam moyed l'kulam. It's the same. So my elim l'hakrava. This is all just talking about being makriv. So shtei halechem. I don't understand. The shtei halechem are, you're not makriv them, right? The shtei halechem are brought with the shtei kivsei atzeres on Shavuos, but then we do a tenufa and everything, but they're not, you don't burn them. El pshita l'tchina b'harkada. It's referring to the application, not that you can be makriv them on Shabbos, the shtei halechem, but it means grinding them and sifting. But the kavasi gabi omer lekatsira must be the same thing. We're connecting shtei lechem to omer. It's katsira. Because dachas Shabbos ella. So we see it is doicha Shabbos. Ella omer lahakaraba v'shtei halechem lafia. Actually, what it's talking about is that the omer is referring to be hakaraba, but the shtei lechem is baking it. The baking it is allowed. Why? Because of a Rabbi tanur mekadesh. Because Rabbi, I guess maybe I did get this right, that when it comes to the oven, that's what's mekadesh. That's what sanctifies the shtei halechem. Iafila me'esmoil. So the problem is that if you would have baked it from yesterday, so ifshalei melina. So therefore, it's something in which, when it comes to the shtei halechem, has to be done on that day, because if it was done the day before, then it'll be an isser of lina, and therefore it has to be done that way. Did I write something like that for question TC? See what I wrote. Im mekanish batanur o bekli, then it should be upoisel belina. Okay, that's the extra piece that's missing over there. Okay, but that's the idea behind that. It's TC 18. Okay, so that's. I guess I read the question before we got to this piece. Basava Rebbe Tanu Mekanish, is it true it's the oven? Basanya Kivsi at Saras and Mekachanes Alechem El B'Shchita. So the Shchita that is Mekanish. Ketzad Shachtel Lishman. Let's say you shechted the Kivsi at Saras with the proper intentions. Was Darkdam Lishman, and you also did this Rika properly. Then obviously Kaddish Alechem. Shachtel Shalolishman is Zakadam Shalolishman. Look at Alechem. If you did everything wrong, then the bread's not sanctified. Shachtan Lishman v'Zarkdam Shalolishman. We had this before. You shechted the Lishman, but not the Zrika. So Halechem is Kaddish. The bread still is Kaddish because at least the Shechita was done properly. However, ain't a Kaddish. It is, but it's not. So it's like it is, but it isn't. Like half pregnant, somewhere in the middle. Dibber Rabbi Eliezer, Reb Shimon, because you did Dibber, since you did some of it right, so therefore it's Kadosh from the Shechita, but not Kadosh because of the Zrika. Rabbi Eliezer, Reb Shimon, the whole thing has to be done l'shma. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak hukvu v'lo hukvu ka'amar, says Rashi, not hukdish, but hukva. Shachtan l'shman, if you shachtan l'shman v'zartam l'shman, then hukvu hachalois. Oisin kvasim, then they're designated to be the proper shtei lechem for those kvasim. Just means then you can't change to choose other breads. So you could use other breads. But still, it's not sanctified by the shechita. Rather, it was sanctified by being put in the oven. And since it was put into an oven, which is what's mekanishit, you can't do it before, but then it will become possible. We're going to continue with the next parak tomorrow. Adkan.